Awesome. Welcome again, everybody. We are recording. To start off, I'll just let you know a little bit more about me. My name is Michaella. I'm at Contractor Appointments. I'm the sales director here. I've been here about 8 months, so not too terribly long, but a good amount of time now. I've been in sales for, probably 6 or 7 years in a multitude of ways. I started off in car sales, went into insurance, and now I'm in home improvement. So that's been awesome. I have a background in that. My father was a journeyman electrician, and I was just around contractors my entire life, going to job sites as a kid. So it's near and dear to my heart. My goal today is just that you walk away with at least one nugget from today's interview to help your business get to the next level. With that, I will go ahead and hand it off to Aaron and let him introduce himself.
Thank you. So I'm Aaron. I'm here from Hatch. At Hatch, I am the director of demand generation, and I've been involved in marketing for the better part of a decade now. Made kind of an easier leap than Michaella maybe. I jumped from real estate right into contractors. So when you're in real estate, you end up dealing with a lot of contractors getting stuff fixed and working on homes and getting things fixed up to sell. So pretty easy transition for me. And I've been with Hatch for just over a year now.
Thanks, Aaron. Well, we will jump right in here. I'm going to just kind of start off asking a few questions here. So to kind of start off this, right now in the home improvement space, leads are down overall. Mm-hmm. So in your opinion, with fewer leads available, how do you beat the competition to the chase?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think that's something we're going to cover as we continue to go through this webinar today, and we'll talk about a lot of different points. But the biggest thing you need to be doing is you really need to be more intentional with every lead that you do get. And the difference that we've seen, you talk about leads being down the last few years, everyone was kind of flush with cash. People were doing home improvement projects. People were really taking off and building up their homes or buying new homes, and things were just kind of crazy, honestly. And what we've seen since is people kind of hunkered down. They're holding onto their cash tighter. So the leads that you are getting are typically a little bit more intentional, right? They're trying to improve their living space. We see a lot more people clinging to those low interest rates. And so they really want to, improve the home that they're in instead of buy a new home with double or triple the interest rate that they currently have. And so if you are being just as intentional as they are and treating every lead basically as if it's your last, and we'll talk a little bit more about what you can do to do that. But if you really go into it and go, okay, I'm going to be very intentional with this lead, and I'm going to prove to this lead that I am the obvious choice over any of my competitors, that will play out into closing down that deal for you and your company.
Yeah, definitely. Just being more intentional. Those leads, they seem to be a little bit more engaged than maybe the leads that were coming in when the market was crazy hot. So I like how you went about that. So jumping into our next question. Right now, contact rates for calls are down. I mean, people don't like answering the phone. I know for me personally, if I see a phone number coming in that I don't recognize, I'm sending them to voicemail. I'll check the voicemail, but that doesn't mean I'm going to call them back. So how can booking appointments over text help appointments set and issue rates?
Yeah, so texting is one of the big things that we see when it comes to being intentional with your leads. And so I'm going to take a second to dive into this. Michaella, please feel free to interject at any time. But what I really want to talk about here is you brought up a couple good points. You mentioned first off that if you see a number that you don't know, you're probably going to send it to voicemail. And a lot of people do that now. But on top of that, if you have an iPhone, there's a feature that says block unknown callers. So it's going to go straight to voicemail. And so if you have been relying on calling, even for the past couple of years, I'm sure you felt that frustration of people just ignoring your call, or it gets ignored by the system. They don't ever see it ring. They just see that they have a missed call. So one thing that I want to stress is if you are struggling with calling, like Michaella said, leave a voicemail, right? They're probably going to check that voicemail. So if you are trying to get in touch with a lead, leave a voicemail, explain who you are, why you're calling, hey, I saw that you reached out on our website. You're looking to have your roof redone, whatever the case may be. My name's so-and-so from Roofers Anonymous. We'd love to work on your roof. And if you leave that voicemail, it gives you a better chance of making that call work in your favor. The downside of that is you still need them to reach back out and call back. So the good news, and this is what you're talking about a little bit, is texting is bridging that gap. And it's 2023, all of us text, right? We love to text. It's one of the most widely used methods of communication, if not the number one at this point. And it still kind of surprises me when I run into business owners in general, not just contractors, that haven't employed texting yet. And the reason that texting is so powerful is 97% of text messages are read. You get a 97% open rate, which if any of you guys had a 97% answer rate on your calls or a 97% open rate on your emails, you would be doing backflips, right? You'd be thrilled. So you get this 97% open rate, and most of those texts are opened and read within 5 minutes. So not only is it a super high open rate, it's a super high engagement rate. They're reading it within the first 5 minutes of sending those text messages. And so what we're seeing is phone calls have kind of shifted from being the initial contact method, where it used to be, let's reach out on the phone, see if we can get in touch with them, to now phone calls are further down the line, right? So we want to get in touch with them with the text messages first, and then you can shift to phone calls when you have to, get some more important details or some information that they probably don't want to send over text. Credit cards, addresses, different things. Some people are a little more security conscious than others. So it's easy to switch to that once you've started that conversation. So the thing that I want to stress here is you should be using texting to start the conversation with your leads. And what that's going to do is you're going to have the 97% open rate. You're going to get it read within 5 minutes. You're going to be able to get in touch with those people, and they're much more likely to text you back, because a phone call back is something a lot of people won't do, but a text message back is very, very easy. And especially if you say something to the effect of, feel free to return, feel free to text this number back. That opens that door, like, oh, I can text this back. This isn't just an automated number that no one's going to see and no one's going to reply to. So you use that texting to start the conversation with your lead, because the biggest hurdle that you have with any lead is just getting in touch with them. Even if they raise their hand and reach out to you, you need to get back in touch with them and get them to have that two-way conversation back and forth. And that's why texting is changing the game, because if you look at that as that's your foot in the door, and then the phone call is, where you're starting to close things, it's going to change the way you approach the industry, and it's going to change the way you approach leads and customers. And you're going to meet them on a level that they prefer to be met at, especially when it comes to communication.
Definitely. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, with the way that the world has shifted, texting is a great way to start that initial conversation. People have kind of leaned away from calls. They don't answer calls right away. So being able to text them right off the bat gets that open rate, gets a better response rate. Would you recommend any sort of verbiage within that first text? Do you want it similar to how you would leave a voicemail? Or how do you think that first initial text should go?
Yeah, so that's a great question. There are a couple things that you should have in your initial text message to your lead. But before I dive into that, the one thing that I do want to stress here when it comes to text messaging, more important than your verbiage, more important than what the text says, is being the first one to respond. So typically, if a lead has reached out to you, they've probably reached out to several other people, or they've used a lead aggregator that sent the lead out to multiple other contractors, right? It's pretty common that a lead has reached out to multiple people by the time they talk to you. You need to be the first one to respond, and you need to respond quickly. If you are the first, upwards of 80% of people will go with the first person that reached out to them. And I'm a perfect example of this. I've told the story a couple of times. So if you've come to some of my other webinars, you probably heard the story before, but about a year ago, I was looking to sell my truck and upgrade to a different vehicle. And so I went on Kelley Blue Book, I filled out everything, and I clicked submit. And as I'm clicking submit, there's this little checkbox that says, do you want an instant cash offer for your car? And I was like, well, that sounds great. Yes, I do. So I clicked it, hit submit. And what it did is it just basically blasted my information, my truck's information, out to all of my local car dealers. And within about 30 seconds, I got my first text message, and it was this agent, and he followed a pretty well-known strategy as far as the first text message goes. And I'll go into that here in a second, but he just basically reached out and said, hey, love to buy your car. Can you come in? We can take a look at it. And so I started texting back and forth with him and explaining, we sent him the VIN number and the mileage and different things like that. And as I'm doing that, I'm getting text messages from the other car companies as well, right? And they're starting to text me back and go back and forth with me. But I didn't want to send all that information again. I didn't want to send my VIN back over again. A VIN's annoying to type. No one likes typing out a VIN. I didn't want to send my odometer over. I didn't want to go find my license plate number again. Even though I had it in another conversation, I didn't want to copy and paste it. And so long story short, I sold my truck to the first guy that reached out and bought a truck from his dealership. And granted, that worked out because they had the truck I wanted. So that was a little convenient there. But he was the first one that reached out. And because I'd already started that conversation with him, I didn't want to start a conversation with anybody else. And had that not worked out, I probably would have worked my way down the line. But I was part of that 80% where the first person reached out, I went with them. And that was the difference for me. And so the big thing, if you haven't taken that away yet, is you need to be first. And we can talk about how to be first in a little bit. but you need to make sure you're first when it comes to that lead. As soon as that comes in your system, you need to be reaching out to them immediately. Now let's talk a little bit about the verbiage, kind of going back to the original root of your question. The verbiage should include who you are. So you should have your name, the company that you work with, and address the reason they came into your system, right? So let's say you've got a company that does windows and doors, right? And let's say someone reached out to you for windows. And so you'd say, for example, hi, my name's Aaron. I just got your information. I'm here with Windows and Doors Unlimited. I see you're looking to get some windows installed. Do you have time that we could talk? Or you can say, do you know how many windows you want to get replaced? You can be more specific with something like that. Do you know how many windows you want to get replaced? Do you know if you want single or double pane? You can do something to get that conversation going. A good trick that you can use as well is something that requires a short answer, right? You don't want to ask in the first text message, hey, can you tell me how many windows you need replaced, what your budget is? Like, you don't want to have this massive response that they have to send back to you. It can be something as simple as, how many windows are you looking to have replaced? They respond with 8, and then you know you've got them on the line, right? You can text back and forth with them. So what you want to do is you want to establish who you are, your identity. You know, my name's Aaron Adams, the company you're with, so Windows and Doors Unlimited, and then address their problem directly. You don't want, the last thing you want to do is if they come to you for windows and you say, hey, are you looking to get new doors? They're going to be like, this company's not paying attention to what I want. So again, when we talk about being intentional with your leads, that first text message should be intentional. Hey, I saw you're looking for windows. How many windows do you need? Right. And if you're the first and you incorporate those 3 things, your name, company name, and, you know, address what they're looking for, you should be able to get a response back. And that's one of the best ways that we've seen with that first text message is to get that taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And then I love the fact that you put in there a short answer, just because people don't want to spend a lot of time. They like convenience, kind of why you went with the first person that went with you. You already typed all that answer out. You don't want to do it again. You want the convenience of it. So being that first person, making it a simple response. I like how you phrased all of that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And the really nice thing, if you're kind of struggling with maybe you don't know exactly what to say, you're not sure whether it's a text message or an email, and you're not really sure how you want to word that, the first, opener that you want to send someone, or even like the 3rd or 4th down the line, you're not sure how you want to steer that conversation. You can go on our websites, just use hatchapp.com, and just up in the little browser bar at the top, you can go to resources and click on ebooks and templates. And we have guides, templates, ebooks. They're all completely free to download. You can go in there. You don't have to be a customer at all. You can go in there and download text message templates that will show you exactly what to say. And we've got little brackets where you just replace your name with, first name with your name, that kind of thing. So feel free to go in and download those. That should kind of cut your lead time on that, make that a little bit easier. The only thing I would recommend is when you do start using those, just try to make it in your company's voice a little bit. Every company is a little bit different. Some of you guys, you like to be a little bit more professional. Some of you guys like to have a little bit more fun. Some of you kind of have a tie to the local area that is a little bit of the flavor of your business. So make sure it's still you and your business coming through in those text messages. But yeah, use those templates, tweak them to however you want to do that. And that would be great.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a really great segue into my next question for you. What are some innovative strategies that you're seeing companies use to improve the set and issue rates of those leads?
So the big one that we're seeing is texting, obviously. But we just had this really cool webinar last weekend. We had a conversation with a couple experts, and we're starting to see AI creep its way into lead generation and contacting leads a little bit. And so I don't want to go too far down the AI rabbit hole, because that, like I said, it was a whole separate webinar. There's a whole bunch there. But there's a lot that you can do with AI, whether it's using AI to help you write those text messages or to write those emails, or you can use it to respond when you're not there. We've had people using chatbots, for when they're closed or on weekends, those kind of things, so that they're still getting customers' information. They're using the chatbot to collect the information. Can I get your name? Can I get your number? Can I get your email address? So we're seeing some of those AI advancements, especially as AI gets a little bit smarter and that, snowball starts to roll down the AI avalanche hill, so to speak, a little faster. People are starting to use some AI tools and tricks, and they're using them in their CRMs. They're using them with their contacting. They're using them in lots of different ways. And so that's a big one that's coming out right now. Like I said, I don't want to dive too much into that, but we're starting to see some of that. But the other thing that we're really seeing is people are starting to automate the busy work, right? And when I say automate the busy work, what I'm talking about, and this is something that Hatch actually specializes in, it's kind of what we're known for, is sometimes getting that first conversation started is tough, right? Just getting a homeowner to respond. You can send a couple text messages, your sales reps have made a couple phone calls, and you haven't heard back, and you're a little frustrated, right? Getting that first initial response is the toughest thing. And so if you're automating that, and we've got it into Hatch where you can build out these campaigns that will send out emails, text messages. You can use ringless voicemail if you want to, kind of like we talked about at the start. But you can send out these automated sequences that will try and contact this customer or this lead for you multiple times. And you can set it so, like, let's say day one, you want to reach out to them with a text and email, give them a break on day 2, and then day 3, send them another text message. Day 4, maybe we send them a text message and an email. So you can set up these campaigns so they auto run in the background. And then what will happen is, as soon as that homeowner responds and says, hey, this is what I want done, or this is how many windows I want, going back to the earlier example, you get a notification, and then you jump in and have a conversation with a real person. And so that's been a big difference maker with a lot of companies, is they're using that not only for new leads, right? They're using it to get in touch with those new leads, like we talked about. You want to be that first person in the door. You want to be the first person to reach out to them. And so using an automated system where you don't have to think about it, it's set and forget, and then you just jump in when there's a question asked or when they respond. That's the way to go, in my opinion. But people are using that to get in touch with the new leads, but they're also using that to do some rehash, go through their old leads, which is where a lot of money has been hiding. We talked about, how we got everyone was flush with leads in the last couple of years. And a lot of companies that I've talked to weren't able to get through some of those leads, or they kind of got a little lazy and just cherry picked the easy ones, which I completely understand, right? Like, you had so much business coming in, it was easy to cherry pick the easy ones that fit your business. But you've got a lot of these customers that reached out, and maybe it wasn't the right time for them, or maybe you just didn't get a chance to get in touch with them. But using a rehash campaign or going back out to an old customer list, an old lead list, and trying to drum up some business there is actually doing really, really well. And so that's how a lot of these companies, where they're kind of struggling with leads, maybe they're, not doing as well as they were, they're going to some of their old leads and creating literally millions of dollars in revenue from those sources. And I think that's a really cool opportunity for a lot of people, because most of those people that reached out within 6 to 18 months are going to purchase whatever they reached out about, right? That was on their mind. They were thinking about it. Some people just take a little bit more time in their decision-making process. So if you're willing to stay on top of it and reach out, 30, 60, 90 days, 120 days, just kind of have like a regular reach out cadence, just checking in, seeing if this is something you're still interested in doing, and just kind of be there for them throughout that. If there's any questions you can answer, that kind of thing, you're going to close business from old leads. And so you don't even have to worry about the new leads. Obviously, we want the new leads coming in, right? We should never stop that pipeline, but don't ignore your old leads. Go ahead and reach out, because there's still, we have a lot of old leads that are less than a couple months old at this point, and some that are even older where they still may have not gotten the service done. And I think that's a big thing, is you take that automation and you can let it run. Like with Hatch, we can reach out to your old leads for you. You don't have to worry about it, run it in the background. And then when they, raise their hands, start talking to you, you jump back in. But if you're reaching out to your old leads and then you're automating your outreach process so that you're the first in the door, and then you're jumping in as soon as there's a real person on the other end and having more of those conversations that matter, it makes a massive difference.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that actually relates. We got a question in from Paul asking about if we're going to talk about generating more leads. And I think that's a really good segue into that. Just, you don't even need to generate more leads, and obviously keeping that pipeline going is great. Keep getting those new leads in. But like you mentioned, rehashing those old leads is a great way to generate those leads back again.
Yeah, exactly. And so
you want to expand on that?
Yeah, no. So you can rehash like we talked about, but I think what we're seeing as far as generating more leads in general, right? Because technically a rehash lead we're not generating anything. We're just going back to the old well, so to speak. But when it comes to generating new leads, there are a couple things that you can do. So one, obviously, running social media ads, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, those places, those are still generating leads for people. Using lead aggregators like Angie, those are still generating leads for people as well. So those are still tried and true methods. But one of the things that we're seeing that is starting to work more and more is kind of going back to that old school approach of, hey, do you know anyone on your street that could use a service like this? We've seen people doing gift cards, saying, hey, if you know someone that is interested in this service, we'd love to give you a gift card. But one trick that has been really awesome that some contractors are doing, and they might get mad at me for sharing this one, it's a tweak on a door knocking method, right? So let's say you're doing a roofing repair, and you're going to have your trucks out, and you're going to have shingles, and you're going to be making noise. You got your nail guns going, all that stuff. You got guys on the roof talking. Go up and down that street, because typically if you've got one roof that needs to be repaired, the homes on that street are probably about the same age. There's probably another roof that needs a repair or replacement. Go up and down that street, have a pocket full of gift cards. I've seen people doing, $10, $15 to Starbucks. Some people, if it's a nice neighborhood, they're doing a little bit more and go out and get a steak dinner kind of thing. But they'll knock on the neighbors' doors and they'll just be like, hey, we're working on the Johnson's house this week. We're going to have our trucks in the way. It's going to be a little inconvenient for you guys. We wanted to just apologize in advance. Here's a gift card. If you guys have any problems, with what we're doing, if there's a noise issue or anything like that, please feel free to come talk to us. We just want to make sure that, while we're doing this is a good experience for you. And you kind of open that conversation with them, and you're giving them a gift. You're being thoughtful of them and being considerate, even though it's not their home that's being worked on. So that opens that conversation a little bit and just be like, yeah, how's your roof looking? Like, have you looked into getting it replaced, that kind of thing? Do you have any leaks or issues? And, obviously it can go for windows, doors, kitchen remodels, whatever the case may be. But by kind of being proactive in that way, kind of that old school door knocking approach, and it's not necessarily door knocking for the lead, you're door knocking, to let them know that you're in the area and there's going to be some noise and some construction dust. They really appreciate that. But then that makes that conversation a lot easier to have, hey, we're thinking of you. While we're thinking of you, is there something going on with your roof that we could take a look at? Do you need us to just go take a peek? We'll do a free, estimation or take a look and see if there's anything wrong. We've seen a lot of people start to have success kind of going old school like that. So a lot of the ways to generate leads still work. It's just working at a slower rate. You got to spend a little bit more money. But a lot more of those old school leads are starting to come back. Those old school ways to generate leads are starting to come back into play. And so you can have success. I think the main thing when it comes to generating leads is be creative and think outside the box. If it worked in the past and it's not working now, try something that you haven't done before and see what sticks. And if it sticks, run with it. And if it doesn't, pivot and try something new. But there are a lot of ways that will still work to generate leads for you. And you just have to make sure you're staying on top of it.
Absolutely. I love that. I actually had a friend that she bought all new windows on her house because of a similar situation.
Yeah.
So it works. I mean, being friendly and just being courteous and just trying to build that relationship before even trying to make that sell is really important. So I love that idea. I know, especially with people working from home now, there's way more people working from home since COVID hit.
Yeah.
Even though some people are still going back to the office, a lot of people are doing a hybrid situation. So it's just a lot easier to get a hold of people when you're doing door knocking. So I love that idea. I do have a couple of more questions that came in that I just kind of wanted to go over before we moved on. Mm-hmm. And this kind of relates back a little bit. I had someone ask, as a general contractor, what if I need to focus only supporting hospitals in my town? Is there a specific approach that you use to support this? So if they're reaching out to businesses, focusing mainly on commercial, is there a way that texting can still be integrated with that?
Yeah. So personally, I don't have any experience with working with hospitals. So I'm not going to give you any advice as far as working intentionally with hospitals. That's going to be, you know that situation much better than I do. So I will leave that to your expertise. But the reality is when it comes to reaching out, whether it's email, phone calls, or text messages, I think within each vertical, whether it's hospitals or residential or commercial, you're going to learn which method works the best, right? And just because you have high contact rates in one, but low close rates in another, I think you need to take all that into account, right? And so you need to look at which ones have a high contact rate, but also close well for you and opens that conversation well for you. So that would be my advice on that is if you're trying to contact only hospitals, look at your data, look at your past data. Okay, did phone calls work? Did we get in touch with who we needed to? Did text messaging work? Did we get in touch with who we needed to? Did email work? Did we get in touch with who we needed to? And then once you've learned that, take it a step further and go, okay, how many did we close from the phone calls? What was the value there? How many did we close from the texting? What was the value there? How many did we close from emails? What was the value there? Look at that across the board and then figure out which one is your best and then prioritize, right? Don't completely abandon one just because it had less than the others. If you're making money from it and having contact conversations happen, still use it, but then like let's say text messaging is your bread and butter. Make that your number one priority. You try to reach out to everybody with text messaging right out of the gate. If your next best option is phone calls, use phone calls to reach out after that. And then if email is your third, use email and just kind of play with that. A lot of it comes down to understanding your business and really understanding your customer base and communicating the way that they want to communicate. So if they text you back, text them back. If they email you back, email them back. Don't be that business that they get a text message back and they immediately call, right? You're going to kill the momentum that you just developed there. So communicate the way they want to communicate, and really look and understand your numbers and see what works for your vertical, what works for your community, and what works for your geographical area. And once you've done that, that should give you a really good direction to run in and how you can kind of rank those methods of communication and which one you need to run with the most.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great idea. Just trying them all out, keep some stats on what works best, prioritizing it, and then making sure you're still doing all of it, but doing it in that order that seems to have the higher close ratio. So I think that's a great advice right there. One last question here, and this kind of relates back to the prior question that we talked about. So after texting your name, the company name, and what they want done, Keith wanted to know, what about asking when they can talk? Would you suggest doing that, or would you wait later on in the conversation for that?
Typically, we see it works a little bit better if you wait a little bit longer. So the first thing you want to do is your first goal with any reach or outreach to a lead is to get a response, right? That should be your first goal. And so that's why I'm a big fan of simple answer questions, right? Yes, no, a small number, that kind of thing. When it comes to asking, when can we talk? That's kind of an open-ended question, and it can put a little pressure on someone who maybe has some anxiety when it comes to the talking on the phone, which is why we see, the rise of calls being blocked and unknown numbers not being answered. There are a lot of people that just don't enjoy talking on the phone at this stage. And so I personally prefer to kind of get that conversation started and then go into it. Now, with that said, we do have customers that use Hatch that right out of the gate, they're going, hey, when can we talk? And they have customers that respond. They get a time set up that works. You can also, I've seen some people that will include like a link like to a Calendly calendar where you can go in and schedule time. So it's not even that they have to respond to you. They can just click on the link, go and schedule a time. Self-scheduling it kind of tends to be hit or miss. Sometimes they'll show up. Sometimes they'll just ditch out on the meeting, unfortunately. So like I said, your first goal with whatever method you use, whether it's a phone call, email, text message, ringless voicemail, whatever the case may be, your first goal should be getting that response back. So that's why I'm a big fan of using short answer responses, just because it's easy for me to respond back and go, I need 8 windows or 8, that kind of thing. So start that conversation so that that they're willing to talk to you, and then kind of warm it up to that point where you can get to the phone call. Or like I said, if you're dealing with people that don't mind talking on the phone, if you can just dive in and say, hey, when's a good time to chat? That works too. I would recommend taking that possibly a step further and be like, hey, would it be better to talk to you Tuesday or Wednesday? Give them kind of options, right? That's an easier response. It's still a short answer. Just be like, hey, we'd love to chat a little bit more about your project. Do you have time Tuesday morning or Wednesday afternoon, right? And then they can respond back and say Tuesday morning. That's an easy answer. And then you can call them Tuesday morning. And then you can, take it a step further from there and be like, hey, how does 10 a.m. Tuesday morning sound? So different things like that, where you can kind of create that creates a micro commitment from the customer, where they've responded, you've opened that conversation, but you've also gotten them to state when they're willing to talk. So lots of options you can play with there. The big thing here is test and figure out what works for you and your company, right? Figure out what works for your area and then run with that. I don't know any of your individual areas. I don't know the businesses that you're running. I don't know the ticket prices that you're running on those kind of things. So make sure you understand your business and your customer base. And if you do that and then combine that with, automating text messages with Hatch and making sure you're getting the right leads from the right places, like from contractor appointments and different places like that, you're going to crush it. But just make sure you know your business first so that you can make educated decisions with your automation, with your messaging, with who you're reaching out to and how you're reaching out to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that kind of is a great segue into my next question for you here, Aaron. So we talked about texting, but so how can you qualify leads and build value over text to ensure you're issuing quality appointments?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that is a great question. And again, the biggest thing that you need to do to qualify those leads is to get a response. That should be your number one, key indicator that this person is interested. Mm-hmm. If you get a lead that comes in and you've sent them multiple text messages, multiple emails, you've tried to call, you've done the whole 9 yards and you haven't heard back, obviously they're not interested. So that should be your first indicator that if you get a response back, that's a big thing. And also the speed of the response, right? If they take a day or two to get back to you, it's probably not as high of a priority as someone who immediately responds and goes, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Yeah. So that's what you're looking for right out of the gate. As far as building that value goes, there are a lot of different things you can do. when you're talking about, let's go back to the windows example, right? Let's say we've had a conversation where we go, hey, how many windows are you looking to have done? And they go, oh, we're looking to get 8 windows replaced. And you go, that's great. We've replaced a lot of windows in your area, right? You're kind of establishing some social proof there. And if you have someone, if you've got their address, for example, the address came in with the lead, you can say, oh, we actually replaced the windows 2 doors down, and they've loved it, that kind of thing. And then you can continue to kind of qualify what they're looking for, go back and forth a little bit. And then once you feel like it's gotten to that point, just be like, hey, would you be open to having a conversation either in person or on the phone? Or do you want me to come over and do an estimate on your windows, that kind of thing? So you should be building that value by creating some social proof. We just replaced windows down the street, at the Johnson's home. They love them. You should use the opportunity as well to be like, if you're curious about like our reviews, you can link to your review page, or you can also link to, like, let's say you've got a PDF on your website that shows like the different types of windows. And so the thing when we talk about being intentional with your messages, and this applies to text messages as well, be intentional with the information that you send them, right? You don't need to send them fluff. You don't need to send them anything that's not going to help them, make that decision. You want to be professional. You want them to really know who you are, what you're going to do for them, and how you're going to take care of them. And so the reason that you're doing that, obviously, and we all know this, by the time we get to the price conversation, they're so convinced that you are the only option that the price is not as important as it would have been if you just led with price. And so it's the same thing with your text, your emails. Make sure you're including social proof. Make sure you're including their options. Make sure they know that their questions are answered, their concerns are being heard. And that's another thing you can do. And again, you don't have to look at this as like a 2 or 3 text message conversation, right? This can be text messages that happen over the course of several days. We've had some that take weeks to close, honestly, and that's just been texting back and forth. So be patient and understand that you're trying to meet your customers' needs at your customer's pace, not at your pace, right? You obviously want to be fast to respond. Anytime they reach out to you, you want to respond quickly. You want to be responsive. You want to show that you're paying attention. You want to show that intention, but you also need to let them lead kind of at their pace. And you can nudge them along a little bit, obviously, and say like, hey, we'd love to do this. We've got this special going on. Can we get you signed up for this special in time, kind of thing. You can do little things like that. But if you're intentional with your social proof, you're intentional with the offerings that you have, and you're really intentional with listening to their concerns and their problems, that's what's going to build that value. And they're going to be like, this company or this sales rep at this company really understands my situation. They're really trying hard to work with my financial budget, and they're really trying hard to get me exactly what I want. And when you have all of those aligned, that makes that close so much easier. And like I said, when you're in line with that, the numbers aren't as important when it comes to the finances. Or you can work with them and be like, hey, we've got some financing options available, different things like that. So just use everything as a chance to be intentional and build that value.
Exactly. Building that trust and building that relationship. It can happen over text, and just being patient with the homeowners in that process. I know anyone that feels rushed by or feels like they're being pressured is likely to run. So like you said, not putting too much pressure on them, going at their pace rather than at your own pace. Even if that feels slow for you, you can put little nuggets in there like, hey, we're actually having a deal right now. Do you want us to come out and give you an estimate so you can take advantage of this $500 off or whatever it may be? And then just going from there, but not being like, all right, when can we meet? Can we meet tomorrow? Just right off the bat, you need to build that trust, build that social value, build your brand in those texts, and then go from there. So I think that's actually really great. Just being intentional, like you said.
Yeah. If you look at every lead, the way I like to say it is look at every lead as if it's your last, right? If this was the last lead you were going to get, how would you go about approaching them to get this sale to close? And I know that can be exhausting. That can be a little bit much, but if you approach it that way, you're going to close a lot more because you're going to be much more intentional. You're going to be more thoughtful with how you reach out, with what you say, with what you try to work with them on, and it makes a massive difference. So now when leads are down, you don't know when the next lead's going to come in. That's not just the phone's not ringing off the hook like it was before. So there's nothing wrong with treating it like it's your last.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I was trying to keep it to 30 to 45 minutes. It looks like we fit right in there. So how can we honor your time today? How can people reach out to you? What's the best way to get a hold of you and your products?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you just go to usehatchapp.com, you can jump on there. If you want, there's a big purple button that says get a demo. If you'd like to see how Hatch can automate all this stuff, how you can beat your competition to new leads and new customers. You can stay in touch with former customers. You can reach out to your old leads and rehash campaigns, different things like that. I would highly recommend that. We'll tailor it to your business. You can see exactly how it's going to work. So just use hatchapp.com. and then click on the get a demo button. Or you can, like I said, go to the resources page. Please download those guides. Please download those templates. Everything you want is right there. It's completely free. You don't have to be a customer. We would love to see you guys downloading that stuff, implement it in your business. They will make a difference. We've seen it make a difference in countless businesses, whether they're Hatch customers or not. So please take advantage of that resource.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Aaron.
Thanks so much for having me. I had a great time.